pH is so dang important, and that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. And it's kind of a combination of pH and what medium you're growing in, okay? That one of the reasons, and again, I've never really gone into this aspect of it, one of the reasons why I wanted to go to a water-only solution and attempt to find a good auto-specific blend that would work for autoflowers start to finish. You could flower it all the way through for the most part. And Bio 365 is definitely the closest I've come. And, you know, I really only have to use Bio 365 if I just top dress, I top dress with it. One of the reasons for that is because their stuff is pH balanced. Okay, it's organic. All of the nutrients have broken down. They're readily available to the plant. Okay, and so I haven't used a pH pen in at least 2 or 3 years. And if I did, it was in a very remote one-off capacity, okay? And so that's one of the reasons I get asked every day, and folks, I understand that Bio 365 is not that easy to get, that they're only a wholesaler, and finding a retailer and then the shipping cost, I understand, guys, I get it. All of that said, it's worth it. In my opinion, it's worth it, especially for new growers. Okay, if there's one thing that I could recommend, or two things that I would recommend, folks, you know, save your money and get quality things, that's going to be lights and soil. Okay? And I get asked those questions 15, 20 times a day, and I recommend using Bio 365 for the reason, one of the main reasons is its pH stability. And that means that my pH, my water that coming out of my well is pretty high at like 7.8. I don't use any kind of buffers, I don't use anything. Every single nutrient that's in there is available in the plant, in the leaf tissues, and so I know that it's getting them, and so I know it has an incredible ability to buffer the pH. So if you're using an traditional organic solution where it's all of the amendments are in some form or fashion organically made and they're available for the plant, then you should not have to pH. Okay. That if it's done right, then you shouldn't have to worry about a pH, for your plant to be able to absorb the nutrients, okay? Now, in certain instances, it depends on how you actually build a compost soil or an all-organic solution. There's different ways to skin a cat, okay? And so there is different ways to go about getting it. If you're getting, it just depends on how you actually make that organic solution, okay? But in a traditional sense, that you don't have to use any kind of pH measures because it's all done, through biomechanical processes, biorelative processes. If there's stuff in these, in the soil that breaks down, then it's available in the soil for the roots to actually use. And then there's little critters, there's little biomes, there's small little bacteria and fungus and mycelium. There's all kinds of little organic and living things. You'll hear organic soil. People call it living soil, okay? There's a reason for that is because we're dependent on, just like we have a rain cycle in our atmosphere where it gets hot and it goes up, makes cloud, comes down, that cycle repeats. There's a similar process that happens in your soil, and that's going to be that bugs eat the stuff that's decaying and they poop out, or they attach themselves in the roots, in the case of mycelium, that they break down the things in the soil that are decaying, that are dying, that are dead. That can be anything from a banana peel to a worm poop, or to a dead root that a worm eats. Okay, and so all of these things have developed in a symbiotic nature to provide these plants with everything they need in the amounts that they need at the exact time that they need them. Okay, if you don't have this solution, if you don't have an organic or a totally living solution, or your soil's too hot and stuff, you may experience problems. So getting to that, that's why I recommend Bio 365, is because they've done all that. It's ready to use, out of the bag, and it's the best stuff that I have. Trent, I see you and I hear you. There's lots of folks that make their own soil. Okay, I do the same. I've got a 12x8 thing of all of my old Bio 365 that I've got 2,500 worms in right now. And so there's a whole thing for that. Okay, so if that's not your solution, folks, and you're growing in a medium that is lacking of nutrients, or you have to add them if it's just a base soil or a cocoa or even deep water culture, that you have to have a good understanding of pH, which is potential hydrogen, okay? And so If you're in a deep water culture, a hydro setup such as a flood and drain or an ebb and flow system, deep water culture, NFT, okay, any of those types of things, or a cocoa solution, you're being responsible for all of the nutritional input for that plant. And so if you're feeding your plant, you have to have an understanding of pH in order to understand what that plant's going to be able to use. Okay, so your DWC and cocoa guys and your hydro and cocoa guys, you want to keep it at around 5.8. Okay, with soil, you want to keep it at 6.8, a 1 point difference. And that has to do with the reason that the ion exchange in water versus soil. There's a whole reason that we could go into, but I'm not going to today. Okay, but at the base of it, you have to provide these things for it. Okay, so if you're in a soil that doesn't have nutrients like a Roots Organic Original or a Pro Mix, anything like that, or even something like a Bio 365 Bio All that's run out of all of its nutrients. You have to be able to supply these plants with what they need, which is going to be water. It's going to be nutrients at the right times and the right amounts. All right, and that's kind of the whole thing with growing, guys, is understanding when they need it, what they need it, and how much they need it in. You could have the correct and the best advanced nutrients professional connoisseur line. I've spent $5,000 on nutrients before, guys, that were billed as pH perfect. Because pHing is such an important thing, but it's such a pain in the butt sometimes, okay? That it can be a real bugaboo for a lot of folks, all right? And so you want to make sure that your pH is right. So for you folks out there that send me the pictures and the questions and say, hey, what's wrong with my plant? The very first thing I will tell you in each and every case and ask you is, what's your pH? Because that lets me know, essentially, hey, if your plant is at the proper pH, then it's going to be something with the dosing. It's going to be another environmental factor. I'd say at least 80% of the nutrient-related issues that we see on a daily and weekly basis is pH related. Okay, what happens most of the time is that, again, this is going to be for the folks that are feeding bottled nutrients or dry amendments and things of that. Just you're feeding your plant and you're responsible for its nutritional intake. Okay, that you will feed it for a portion of time and everything will be fine. You add the nutrients, then you add the pH up and down, and you get it to 6.8, and you feed your plant. Well, then 3 or 4 weeks down the road, you're like, what the hell? Why is my plant showing these crazy calcium deficiencies or a phosphorus toxicity? Okay, why is it doing this? And again, most of the time, guys, it's going to be right back to pH. And that's because these salt buildup from those bottled nutrients, these are salt-based nutrients, they'll build up in that pot and they'll cause the pH to fluctuate, okay? So if you're having issues with nutrient-related stuff, you will go on, you'll have me ask you if you've ever done a slurry test. Get familiar with getting the proper equipment to either test with a probe where you stick it in the soil and you can test your soil's pH, or get familiar with the process of doing a slurry test, which is basically running water through your pot and catching a little bit of the, slurry and testing that after a period of time, okay? And so no, Tim, you're okay with 7, but I try to get it down a little bit to 6.8. Again, there's charts, there's 1,000 charts. If you're going to look at a pH chart, you want to make sure that the chart that you're looking at is appropriate for the medium that you're using. If you're in cocoa or if you're in hydro, make sure you're looking at a hydro chart. And that'll show you at what different pH levels, what different nutrients are actually available to the plant. Okay? And so, at 6.8 in soil and 5.8 in hydro or cocoa, you're going to get basically everything. A pretty good line. If you want to dial it in more, guys, for the DWC, for the cocoa guys, I've gotten crazy with it. And specifically fluctuated my pH in a range and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, if you can keep it at 5.8 and 6.8, you're going to be doing okay, and you're going to be doing just fine, and the plant will absorb all the nutrients at the proper rates at both of those. So, you want to make sure that stuff is proper, that you have a good understanding of what the role that pH plays in your plant's existence. Okay? It's a very, very important one, and I suggest that if folks are new and you're just starting this journey of learning how to cultivate cannabis, I would suggest starting at pH, man, for real. A lot of people want to put the cart before the horse, so to speak, and a lot of people want to get caught up in, a plant this big and asking drying and harvesting questions and stuff. And I get it, guys. It's a very exciting time for a lot of folks. You're new to legalization. You're new to a time when you can actually do this without fear of getting in trouble. And I understand that. I understand that completely. If I were to give advice, and if I have, and I do, that start with pH, get a fundamental understanding, and then a high-level understanding of the role that potential hydrogen plays in pH plays in your plant's existence. Okay? So, I think I did, I think I pretty much nailed it there on the time. I wanted to give you guys a good